Once you know this secret, shut up or face the consequences. Carl Jung. Every time you correct someone unnecessarily, you're sending a subtle message. I'm smarter than you, and I need you to know it. Over time, people stop sharing ideas around you. They stop being vulnerable. They start feeling judged. Here's what Jung discovered. All three of these mistakes stem from the same root cause, the desperate need for external validation. When you overshare plans, over-explain actions, or overcorrect others, you're trying to control how people perceive you. But paradoxically, you're revealing exactly the insecurities you're trying to hide. Now, I know some of you are thinking, but what about being authentic? What about honest communication? And that's exactly what we need to talk about next. Because Jung's approach to authentic silence is completely different from what most people think. Section 4. The Power of Conscious Silence. Here's where Jung's psychology gets really profound. He didn't advocate for silence as a manipulation tactic or a way to seem mysterious. He understood silence as a form of consciousness, a way of being present without imposing your ego on every situation. Conscious silence isn't about withholding information or playing games. It's about understanding the difference between speaking from wisdom and speaking from woundedness. It's about recognizing when your words will truly serve a situation versus when they'll just serve your ego. Jung himself practiced what he called active listening, not just waiting for your turn to talk, but genuinely trying to understand the psychological world of the other person. When you're truly listening, you naturally speak less, and when you do speak, your words have more impact. Before speaking in any important situation, Jung suggested asking yourself 4 questions. First, am I speaking from fear or from love? The fear-based speech is usually defensive, justifying, or attacking. Love-based speech is curious, supportive, or constructively honest. Second, will my words help or harm the other person's growth? Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let someone discover their own truth, instead of forcing yours on them. Third, am I trying to be right or am I trying to be helpful? These are often mutually exclusive, especially in emotional conversations. And fourth, what am I really hoping to achieve with these words? And if you're honest with yourself, you might realize you're trying to get validation, win an argument, or avoid discomfort rather than actually communicate. But here's the warning Jung gave to his most advanced students. Once you master conscious silence, you'll start seeing how unconscious most human communication really is. You'll watch people argue past each other, never really listening. You'll see them share information that weakens their position without realizing it, and this knowledge can be isolating. You'll find yourself in conversations where you could easily win or prove your point, but you'll choose not to because you understand the psychological cost. You'll let people believe things about you that aren't true, because correcting them would serve no real purpose. Jung called this holding the tension of opposites, being simultaneously engaged and detached, caring and objective, present and protected. It's one of the most sophisticated psychological skills you can develop. Now, before we talk about the practical techniques for developing this skill, I need to address something that might be making you uncomfortable. Some of you are probably thinking this sounds manipulative or inauthentic. Let me share Jung's perspective on this, because it completely changed how I think about honest communication. Section 5. Authentic silence versus manipulation. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Is strategic silence just manipulation with a fancy psychological name? Jung wrestled with this question his entire career, and his answer might surprise you. Jung made a crucial distinction between functional silence and neurotic silence. Functional silence serves the relationship and the truth. Neurotic silence serves only your ego or your fear. Neurotic silence is the silent treatment, withholding communication to punish someone. It's staying quiet because you're afraid of conflict, even when speaking up would help. It's keeping secrets that protect you but harm others. Functional silence is choosing not to share your opinion when it won't help anyone. It's staying quiet during someone else's emotional process. Instead of rushing to fix or advise, it's keeping confidences that were entrusted to you. Here's what Jung understood that most people miss. Being completely authentic, meaning sharing every thought and feeling, isn't actually honest communication. It's emotional dumping. True authenticity requires filtering your expression through wisdom, timing, and care for the other person. I used to think that holding back my opinions or not correcting people's mistakes was being fake. Then I realized I was confusing authenticity with impulsivity. Just because I think something doesn't mean the world needs to hear it. Just because I feel something doesn't mean everyone else needs to experience it. Jung saw this as a sign of psychological maturity, the ability to have thoughts and feelings without immediately expressing them. It's not suppression. It's conscious choice. It's the difference between a child and an adult. But Jung was also clear about when silence becomes harmful. You should speak up when someone is in danger, when injustice is happening, when you have information that could help someone make a better decision. The key is speaking from service, not from ego. And yes, there's a shadow side to silence too. Some people use conscious silence as an excuse to avoid difficult conversations, to maintain superiority or to manipulate others through withholding. Jung warned that any psychological tool can become a weapon if you're not honest about your motivations. So how do you know if you're using silence authentically? Check your motivations. Are you staying quiet because it serves the situation or because it serves your image? Are you withholding information to help someone learn or to maintain power over them? Now that we understand the psychology behind conscious silence, let's talk about how to actually implement this in your daily life. Because knowledge without application is just entertainment, and Jung was all about practical wisdom. Section 6, Practical Application and Mastery. All right, let's get practical. How do you actually develop this skill of conscious silence without turning into a robot or becoming socially awkward? Jung developed specific techniques that you can start using today. First, practice the pause. Before responding to anything emotionally charged, count to 3. This tiny gap allows your conscious mind to catch up with your emotional reaction. You'll be amazed how often those 3 seconds save you from saying something you'll regret. Second, learn to redirect with questions. When someone asks your opinion on a sensitive topic, try responding with, well, what's your thinking on that? Or how did you come to that conclusion? You learn more, they feel heard, and you avoid unnecessary conflict. Third, do regular energy checks. Before speaking, ask yourself, what energy am I about to bring to this conversation? And if it's anxiety, frustration, or need for validation, consider waiting until you can speak from a calmer place. Start small. Practice staying quiet during one conversation per day, where you would normally offer unsolicited advice. Notice what happens. Often people work out their own solutions when they're given space to think. For bigger situations, use Jung's 24-hour rule. If you're upset about something and want to have a confrontation, wait 24 hours. Write down what you want to say, then revisit it the next day. You'll be surprised how often the issue resolves itself, or your perspective shifts. Remember, this is a skill like any other. You'll make mistakes. You'll catch yourself oversharing or speaking from ego. Jung said the goal isn't perfection. It's consciousness. Just becoming aware of your communication patterns is 90% of the work. But I'll leave you with Jung's final warning. This knowledge is powerful, and with power comes responsibility. Use it to become more compassionate, not more superior. Use it to serve others, not just yourself. The moment you start feeling smug about how much better you are at communication, you've lost the plot. So there you have it. Jung's secret about the power of conscious silence. Once you truly understand this principle, you'll never communicate the same way again. You'll catch yourself before making those fatal mistakes. You'll create deeper relationships through listening. You'll have more influence through speaking less. But remember Jung's warning. With this knowledge comes the responsibility to face the consequences of what you see. You'll notice how much unconscious communication surrounds you every day. The question is, will you use this awareness to become more manipulative or more compassionate? If this video changed how you think about communication, hit that like button and subscribe for more psychological insights that actually change your life. And here's your homework. Practice conscious silence in one conversation today. Don't give advice that wasn't asked for. Don't correct a mistake that doesn't matter. Just listen. And then come back and tell me in the comments what you discovered. Next week, I'm breaking down Jung's most controversial theory about why some people attract drama everywhere they go. And it's not what you think. You won't want to miss it. And if you want to dive deeper into psychological self-mastery, check out my video on Jung's shadow work. It's the perfect companion to what we covered today. I'll see you in the next one. Carl Jung once said something that could completely change how you navigate every relationship, every conversation, and every opportunity in your life. But here's the terrifying part. Once you understand this psychological secret, you'll realize that most people are unconsciously sabotaging themselves every single day through one simple act: talking when they should be silent. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the most successful people in history, from ancient philosophers to modern billionaires, have mastered what Jung called the art of strategic silence. And more importantly, you'll learn the exact moments when speaking up will destroy your relationships, your career, and your inner peace. But I'm warning you right now, this knowledge comes with a heavy responsibility. Once you see the patterns I'm about to show you, you can never unsee them. You'll notice when others are making these fatal mistakes, and you'll have to resist the urge to save them from themselves. Because sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is let people learn through their own consequences. If you're ready to unlock one of psychology's most powerful secrets, hit that like button right now. Subscribe for more life-changing content. And let's dive into the mind of one of history's greatest psychologists. Section 1, The Shadow of Speech. Let me tell you a story that happened to me last week. I was at a networking event, and I watched a brilliant entrepreneur completely destroy a potential $1 million partnership in exactly 47 seconds. How do I know it was 47 seconds? Because I was timing it. This person had everything going for them. The right product, the right connections, the right opportunity. The investor was clearly interested, leaning in, asking thoughtful questions. And then the entrepreneur made the fatal mistake that Jung warned us about over a century ago. They couldn't stop talking. Jung understood something that modern psychology is only now catching up to. Every word you speak reveals not just your thoughts, but your unconscious mind, your fears, your insecurities, your desperate need for validation. It all pours out when you don't know when to be silent. Jung called this the shadow of speech, the dark side of communication that most people never recognize. When you speak from your shadow, you're not communicating. You're bleeding your unconscious wounds all over the conversation. And here's what Jung discovered that will blow your mind. The people who achieve the most in life aren't necessarily the best speakers. They're the ones who know when not to speak. They understand that silence isn't empty space in a conversation. It's the most powerful tool you have. Think about the last argument you had. I bet you can remember the exact moment when you said something you immediately regretted. That moment when you felt your emotions take control and words just started pouring out. Jung would say that wasn't really you talking. That was your shadow. But before I show you the 3 types of dangerous speech that are ruining your relationships, let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that the people you most respect tend to speak less than everyone else in the room? There's a psychological reason for that. And it's about to change everything you think you know about communication. Section 2, The Psychology of Power and Silence. Jung spent decades studying what he called psychological types, and noticed something fascinating. The most influential people in any group weren't the ones talking the most. They were the ones who had mastered what he termed conscious silence. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're in a boardroom. There's the person who talks constantly, sharing every thought, every idea, desperately trying to prove their worth. Then there's the person who sits quietly listening, observing. When they finally speak, the entire room goes silent. Everyone leans in. Why? Jung discovered that silence creates what psychologists now call psychological gravity. When you speak less, your words carry more weight. When you reveal less, people become more curious about what you're thinking. It's not manipulation, it's understanding the fundamental laws of human psychology. Think about the most charismatic people you know. I bet they're not the ones who dominate every conversation. They're the ones who ask great questions and then actually listen to the answers. They create space for others to reveal themselves. But here's where it gets dangerous. Once you understand this principle, you'll start noticing how most people are constantly weakening their position by oversharing, over-explaining, and over-justifying. You'll see friends sabotaging their relationships by saying too much at the wrong time. You'll watch colleagues destroy their credibility by not knowing when to stop talking. And this is where Jung's warning comes in. Once you know this secret, you must shut up or face the consequences. Because now you'll be tempted to use this knowledge to manipulate others. You'll want to correct everyone's mistakes. You'll feel superior because you can see what they can't see. Jung called this the inflation of knowledge. When understanding psychological principles makes you feel above others instead of more compassionate toward them, this is the first consequence you need to face. The more you understand human psychology, the more isolated you might become. But before we dive into the specific mistakes that are costing you relationships and opportunities, I need to share Jung's most controversial insight about silence. He discovered that there are 3 types of secrets you should never share with anyone, no matter how close you are to them. And if you've been sharing these secrets, it explains why some of your relationships feel different lately. Drop a comment below if you think you know what these 3 secrets are. I'm curious to see how many of you have already learned this lesson the hard way. Section 3, the 3 fatal mistakes. All right, let's get into the psychology that most people will never understand, and frankly, most people can't handle. Jung identified 3 specific ways that people destroy their own lives through speech. And I guarantee you've made at least one of these mistakes in the past month. Fatal mistake number 1. Sharing your future plans before they're established. Jung observed that when you tell people about your goals and dreams, before you've taken substantial action, something psychological happens. Your brain gets a dopamine hit from the positive feedback, and it tricks you into feeling like you've already accomplished something. Meanwhile, you've also invited judgment, skepticism, and sometimes even sabotage from others. Modern research calls this social reality, and it's deadly. When you announce your intentions, you're asking the world to hold you accountable before you're ready. You're also revealing your vulnerabilities to people who might not have your best interests at heart. I learned this the hard way when I told everyone I was writing a book. Suddenly, everyone became an expert on publishing. Everyone had an opinion about my timeline, my topic, my approach. The enthusiasm I felt was replaced by anxiety about living up to everyone else's expectations. Fatal mistake number 2. Defending yourself when you haven't been accused of anything. This is what Jung called unconscious confession. When you over-explain your actions or justify decisions that nobody questioned, you're revealing guilt, insecurity, or hidden motives. You're essentially prosecuting yourself in a court where no charges were filed. Think about it. Someone asks where you were last night, and instead of saying at home, you launch into a detailed explanation about why you were home, what you were doing, who can verify it. That person wasn't suspicious until you made them suspicious. Fatal mistake number 3. Correcting people when being right doesn't matter. Jung understood that the need to be right is often more about ego than truth. When you correct minor mistakes in casual conversation, you're not sharing knowledge, you're asserting dominance, and people feel that energy, even if they can't articulate it.